So I want to get your perspective on this, Ayat, because this is kind of something that, I know I have a very specific point of view on the semantic web and how that's impacted e-commerce, which some SEOs, like, I know that they have a different perspective, or we might get into debates about those kind of things. But I'm kind of one of those people who use Google for a lot of things. Like, I use it a lot for research, or if I, have some random existential crisis in my head that I need to go down a rabbit hole and stuff like that. I use Google heavily and I
Yep.
know how to use all of the search operators and all this kind of stuff. And one of the most frustrating thing for me is when I'm looking for something very specific, especially if I'm looking for like one of my old blog posts and, I know a specific group of keywords that was in there. I go into Google to find it. The semantic web has just messed everything up, right? You can't find things on exact keywords anymore, and things are getting a lot more foggy and fuzzy. And I think it makes it more difficult for SEOs to actually, give guidance or to actually optimize a page. And when you think about for e-commerce, or if you're, B2B software or anything like that, it's a lot less precise of a discipline, right? Have you seen that with your
Yep.
practice, and how do you handle this kind of like move towards the semantic web?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of, whether it's e-commerce or B2B or lead gen, a lot of companies struggle in general with being able to rank. I mean, I know that even for us in at Invesp, our own company, we basically were ranking for so many different terms, and then suddenly Google pushes out new changes, and it completely almost like wiped us out for like a few years. So that was like, and trying to figure out how to come back from that has been just like an absolute, like nightmare for us. But I mean, still, nonetheless, we were able to, through like, content, through some of those practices that, we know have kind of worked. And I think SEOs as well, like, they do rely a lot on content in order for you to kind of like, just improve rankings overall. So, I mean, we've been able to kind of get back a little bit, but not to the extent that we were before. So, and just like you said, like things right now when you're searching for certain terms, and some of the results that you're getting are definitely not what you're expecting. I think, e-commerce companies, obviously, if you have the budget, they're focused a lot on, like ad campaigns, just because a lot of times SEO isn't necessarily working for them in terms of just getting that ranking and being able to appear in search results for customers.
Do you think that semantic ranking was the right thing for Google to do? I think that if they're trying to go towards natural language processing and all that kind of stuff, it's a natural step to do that. But I do think that it's had some user experience problems that, affect both, the person looking for something and also the person trying to, put content out there or put products out there. What do you think? Is Google losing its way?
I mean, I think in general, like, it's all about, right, the intent. And I think that sometimes with the semantic rankings, you lose sometimes customer intent, because it's really hard to, I mean, I just know for myself when I like Google something and I use certain terms, I'm like, and some results come up and I find the result that I'm looking for. I'm like, oh, I probably searched the wrong thing to begin with. So, they can never anticipate that human behavior, like, and what people are thinking. And that's, I think, like, the struggle with it really in general.
Hmm. Well, we shall see what happens in the next couple years.
Yeah. Where do you think it's going?
I think everything's going to go cards based, voice, more and more and more, right? So it's going to be an ask and answer engine. I think that's where Google wants to go. And I think the big challenge with that is like they're trying to experiment with that right now, but it actually takes so much computer power. Like we're nowhere near that. So let's say Google or the richest of the rich companies, let's say Amazon, maybe Walmart, maybe throw in one more, maybe it's
Yeah.
yeah, throw in one more. Maybe Instagram gets the resources and the computing power to do that, and then throw in net neutrality in there too, and then you've got a real mess. But the amount of processing power that it takes to be able to take all the possible permutations of a conversation, right, and all the possible chat dialogues that you could come back in a card-based system is just. Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to trickle down to where the mom and pop shop with a Shopify store is going to be able to take advantage of like this kind of voice search. But within a search engine, yeah, maybe. Like right now, it's just kind of for a certain amount of high volume searches. I don't know. We'll see. I know that there are super smart people working on faster and faster processors, and maybe this is just the natural evolution of everything. Maybe we're going to have that super trillion, quadrillion, what's that? What's the biggest tetrillion? I'm not a math person. But, like we're going to get there. We're going to get the super processor. But like then do we want to waste it on, somebody asking what the Philadelphia Eagles score was last night? Or, do we want to use it on things that, are actually meaningful? Someone's going to have to make those decisions, which are the keywords and search terms that we want to dedicate this muscle behind.
Yeah, but I think in general, still that means like smaller companies are always at the kind of like they're the companies that are going to struggle with this the most, and what to make of it, and how do they, in what direction really do they go? I don't know. Like, what do you think that in general smaller companies should do, and in preparation for what's to come?
So there's a couple there's a couple ways that this could work, right? You could get one vendor that gets out there and builds a SaaS product that everyone can then just subscribe to, so you get the full semantic engine, get matching functionality and whatever, but it's just run in somebody else's cloud, right? And then served back through whatever magic in the ether, right? Or it might be that, all roads lead back to Amazon as usual, where they get the technology, they offer the technology, and then they'll say like, well, if you're a marketplace seller or if you're a brand selling direct through our brand registry program or something like that, then you'll get these additional features and stuff. But it's even with personalization, right? Personalization tools are so democratized right now. And they work really well at scale when there's a lot of data, a lot of customer, a lot of inventory turnover. And if you're smaller, it just takes so much longer to get those affinities, mathematically significant. You're a conversion rate optimization person, so this, right? You only optimize pages that get enough traffic to support it. So unfortunately, small usually has to deal with, hey, taking good enough, or taking a broad-based product that everybody, an undifferentiated, uncompetitively strategic experience or product, and you can tap into that.
Yeah. I think that's always the struggle, like you said, is that, smaller businesses always have kind of like the lower brunt, so they just have to figure out ways around, like just in order to get seen in general and to rank for certain terms.
Yeah. But it's like now we're at a time where think about even with web development, right? Like think about some of the amazing Shopify templates and the features and functionality you can get for say $40 a month now, those barriers, whereas 10, 15 years ago, man, you needed like a $10,000 budget just to get a template put together. So the democratization of technology is fantastic. So maybe I'm just talking out of my ears right now, and that in 5 and 10 years, this stuff gets so good that, everyone can have access to it. And that would be nice. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, there are things that are making it easier. And there are, of course, like, those challenges that you have to like kind of just roll with the punches as they come, because it's hard to, you see things going in a certain direction, but it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen in the next couple of years. So I guess it's one of those things that we'll wait to see what Google has in store for us.
I consciously sat out of the, annual predictions kind of game, like that's a popular thing to do in January. Like, these are my e-commerce predictions or this, whatever. And my attitude towards that this year was like, just take the trends that were strong last year and just predict that they're going to continue. And even that lazy way of approaching this was totally completely wrong now, right? There's just been a monkey wrench thrown into the world. And I mean, one of the things that I really thought this year would become a strong consumer expectation, but be only something that Amazon or the Amazon size, merchants would be able to do, is same day shipping. I thought that was definitely going to crest, and because, whether they use Uber couriers to do the last mile or whatever, or drones or some of these weird, crazy...
Or drones.
Yeah, but that was going to be like free same day shipping was going to be just, unfortunately for smaller, businesses, it's just that they can't compete. They can't get there. They can't sacrifice the margin for that. And I guess one of the bright sides is that what's actually happening now is people are getting so much more patient with shipping, right? It used to be like next day, definitely free, but, with 1 or 2 day shipping, free overnight shipping, was getting to be so much of a unfortunately mainstream, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it or which side of that coin you're on. But now I think... now I think that if anything, this greater tolerance for slower shipping and, even tolerance for stockouts, and not feeling that surge of, entitlement that, hey, how dare you not have this thing in stock, or how dare you not ship it yet? It's been 3 days, this kind of stuff might be a good thing. Maybe this is a reset of expectations. But yeah, what do you think? Did you have any predictions that are now taking a sudden twist?
I mean, I think definitely nobody anticipated the world to be kind of like at this like standstill, like it is now. I mean, like just looking at Amazon, if I had any prediction, I would say that it was always going to be improving and better, and companies were going to have to like compete with like kind of like the impossible. But it's at least like good to see that it's like the playing field has leveled a little bit. Like Amazon shipping is definitely not anything to like brag about at this point in time. So, it's just the realities of what's happened in the world. But I mean, in terms of other predictions, I mean, I think sometimes you can look at, just like you said, like, that this trend, whatever this trend may be, like, that you're going to see more and more companies, for example, the percentage of companies that are actually like more mobile focused, because like majority of visitors are using mobile devices. That's a trend that we're just going to continue to see as we go along. So some things are just kind of like that they're going to happen just because it's already increasing in that way. So I would say just like you said, they're going to probably double down further throughout the year. But yeah, like you never, when you're doing these predictions or you're thinking about the future, you're never thinking about some unusual circumstance like COVID-19 hitting like the world the way that it did. So it puts things into perspective, I guess, and it like I said, it helps other retailers. They've been able to, if you're smaller and you're agile, you're able to kind of adapt to it. I think like the larger the organizations, the more difficult it's been to adapt. But I think now companies at least are armed with the tools to be able to adapt to these like really insane situations. I hopefully never ever happens again, but you never know.
Yeah.
But what do you think this is doing to the future? What do you think it's doing to the future of brick and mortars, for example, within like the retail space? What do you think is the future there?
I think
I know things. Predictions, like are tough.
I know, yeah. Well, it's interesting because like for a really long time, I think a couple things. I hope I don't get too controversial here or like be insensitive, but like we've been talking about the death of malls and death of retail for a really long time. There's been nothing but Chapter 11 bankruptcies going on, and stuff, virus or no virus. Another thing too is we've kind of had another bubble because of the barrier of entry to be able to start, especially a digital business, an e-commerce business, the access to Alibaba suppliers, the ability to private label and white label stuff and flood it on Amazon and all this kind of stuff. There's just no barriers of entry. There's a lot of people who'll just run an ad on Facebook to gauge demand before they even start their business and produce something, right? Like smart people. But then you get this explosion of choice, and it's a bubble that was ready to pop too. So I think there's a merchandise bubble. Like, let's not even call it retail or e-commerce. There's a merchandise bubble and a production bubble that's ready to pop. What was December, January, all over the news, right? Greta Thunberg. We got to do something about overproduction, what we're doing to the earth, climate change, all this kind of stuff. And, I don't think that anybody would have made any difference to their lifestyle or to their, habits, production habits or anything. So in a weird kind of backhanded way, it's forced the hand of some of this stuff. And I think that there's going to be kind of a correction between supply and demand. And also from the consumer's perspective, we are behaviorally being trained now to understand, is this year's fashion really that important? Like, a lot of fashion brands are pushing back. They're saying we're going to hold inventory, and this year's spring collection is now 2021 spring collection, right? And if you can do that in fashion, it means that it doesn't matter. And
exactly.
Yeah. And we might be holding on to things a little bit longer when we would have disposed of them in the past because they were slightly worn, or, there's something else at the dollar store and we have no value on the things that we do own. So I think there will be I think that there will be a correction there. And in terms of retail, going back to what you're saying about retail and stores, is that going to change? Yeah, I think it's going to take a long time for people to really start feeling comfortable about going and being out in public and touching stuff. And, it's going to be a weird experience. And I know a lot of people are waiting with bated breath for things to open back up again, which is great for the economy, but it's not going to, the water's not going to flow in the same way right away. People need to get comfortable and actually feel safe to go out and do that. So yeah, no predictions here, just...
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I agree. I think that, it's going to change. Like you said, there's been already malls and big, retail stores, department stores in, specifically have been struggling so much. And they haven't been able to, some of them have had they have online experiences, but they haven't been able to translate the store experience into that online experience, which is challenging. Of course, going into a store is so different.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because we have actually a client that was due to open. They had this big grand opening of a new store in, I think it was in Tennessee or something like that. So obviously that's something that they have to put on hold, or possibly even cancel altogether, just because at this point in time, like you said, how long is it going to take? How long can they keep renting these spaces and nobody's actually coming? There's no foot traffic. There's no sales coming out of stores. So I think it will definitely change that, but I think what I'm interested in seeing is, what is it going to do online? Because now everybody is vying for that online space and those eyeballs and trying to get people's attention. So it'll be interesting to see what companies are going to be doing. I think you definitely have to double down on that experience online, but I don't know if retailers are necessarily doing that yet. But that's going to be something that they have to anticipate, because ultimately, you have more and more people. They're going to be people that typically never shopped online are now shopping online.
Yeah. Yeah. And another nuance, right, is that let's say the supply chain sort of dries up, right? And so now, let's say hypothetically for the next 12 months, we're working with a certain amount of inventory. And right now, stores are closed, so retailers might have been moving their inventory out of the stores or making them dark fulfillment centers, and using them that way. And then we open up and you have to decide, okay, which product goes back into the store. But when people are doing buy online, curbside pickup, or ship to the home and shifted their behavior online, now you've got a double-edged sword where the in-store experience now becomes poorer because the store is being used to fulfill online orders, which might even be out of your local area. So what we need more of are these integrated, mobile pre-shopping stuff. Like, first of all, it's got to be real time. I want to make sure that the stuff that I'm looking for is in stock. I can reserve it. It's not going to be picked out from under my nose. And,
Yep.
it's an up-to-date inventory. I don't want to wait till your system, your back end refreshes, at midnight and then updates the next day. I don't want that kind of experience. And I want to maybe even be able to, just flash a QR code when I get to the front, because I don't feel like standing in a queue for 6 hours, right? This is like the new curbside pickup, just like, hey, here's my phone. It gets scanned by a reader, called like whatever, or even on my way, a text message saying I'm 10 minutes away. Then that person can start, in the store, can prepare it, can meet it. I was just at so we've got something called Canadian Tire, which is, I guess, the equivalent of like a Lowe's or a Home Depot in the States, right? And I was just walking by, and the lineup was, stretched around the block, and I was going to Michael's, so I was kind of like, okay, I'm definitely not going into Canadian Tire today. It's too long. But the girl was sitting there. She called one of the clerks over and said, hey, I've been sitting here waiting in curbside pickup for over 20 minutes. What's going on? So we definitely need tools where there can be, like with Uber, right? If your Uber driver is 2 minutes late, he's texting you. You should be able to get a notification, just like it's a hot meal, like, okay, it's up and ready, so that people aren't sitting in a parking lot for 25 minutes, 30 minutes when they could have just gotten in line with the rest of the, I don't know. It's just a lineup.
So do you think, Linda, that means it's like the name of the game is that means convenience? And because essentially, obviously the retail store presence is there to like help people try something on, and then be able to decide if they want it or not. So even like returns, whatnot, all of that, with the fact that people are going to be shopping online more, has to change. So making sure that experience is like a lot more user friendly. Like you said, it's super convenient. If I don't like it, I should be able to return it right away, go to the store, just drop it somewhere. Those types of things. I think it could definitely be challenging for retailers to kind of adapt to that, but ultimately I think convenience is a huge thing for customers.
Yeah. I think, we're spoiled in this age by having every convenience imaginable, and things only get better, right? Technology only works to solve our problems and make things even better. And, human beings will jump through hoops to avoid pain and avoid friction, right? So even my just walking by that gal complaining about the curbside pickup stuff, that has now, changed my mind about ever trying curbside pickup. I just won't do it, right? I'm just either going to pre-shop and make sure that if I do stand in that lineup, it's a sunny day, and that, I'm going to just tolerate the lineup, or, find something that I can bundle and have shipped to my house. But there's word of mouth, people complaining online, but all I had to do was walk by somebody who was having a bad experience. I'm like, I don't want to get involved in that. But
now,
different people have different levels of tolerance. I don't know. Now all the tens and tens of people who are watching this right now.
So Canadian Tire is going to be like, what the happened?
Yeah, single-handedly responsible for their collapse. Yeah. I mean, different people have different levels of tolerance, right? It goes back to the shipping thing, right? Like, are you willing to wait 2 weeks of shipping? I think everybody's kind of a lot more understanding now, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, when it comes to, retailers and just like competing, it's like such a difficult competitive landscape in general. What we always tell our clients is like, you want to make sure that you give customers like an everlasting experience online in order for them to like want to come back, or in order for them to, remember your specific brand. Because like, think about it. I mean, like we have so many options out there. And like you said, I might want to go to the company that's going to, or the brand that's going to provide me with like, more convenient, delivery or like curbside pickup or whatnot. So if you don't have the means to provide that to customers, then your product and that experience that they have online really needs to kind of take it to that next level. Otherwise, there's just no competition.
Yeah.
So do you think that brands can rely on giving that experience, or without, if they don't have the means to provide that, convenience, are they going to still be competitive?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to, there's a lot more tolerance and forgiveness if your product, your merchandise is special, right? And we find this with conversion rate optimization too. Like we were working with a customer at one time doing some A/B tests for them and stuff like that. And at first I looked at their checkout and I'm like, oh my God, like this is going to be shooting fish in the barrel, right? We're going to get like triple digit conversion lift because the checkout is so bad. And so, we gave it the royal treatment, revamped the checkout and stuff, but the lift wasn't that significant at all because their customer, like they had such a unique product. It was a software product. It was like voodoo donuts, right? People would line up around the block. They would put up with a bad process to get it. They'd get on the phone if they had to. If they got stuck in the checkout, they'd convert somehow. And so that there's kind of this seesaw, yeah. Right? You have the luxury of like, if you're a voodoo donut, oh my God, if you're the Apple iPhone launching, like people are going to camp out overnight. Versus, you're just selling something exactly. That I could get anywhere. I don't really care about. I'm not even going to put up with your 3-second page load. So yeah, I think brands can absolutely survive and compete, but it's going to come down to a product and the way that they're perceived, not as much about the execution. And then if you're in the middle of the road, then yeah, you absolutely better be looking at your technology and going, where can we move the needle? And I think a lot of people are, that might be the catalyst to look at either re-platforming or doing a significant upgrade, because oftentimes it's the platform itself that kind of ties your hands actually doing that stuff. Like, yep. It's funny being a consultant too, right? Because you come up with this big long list of things that are like so captain obvious, and they're like, geez, nobody in this room ever thought about that. It's not like we're not consumers ourselves, and thanks for telling us what we don't know. You know what I mean? But like, there's always a reason. So when I'm working with people, I'm always trying to find out, like I work under the assumption that they've already thought of this. Like, let's explore the what and the why, and let's prioritize stuff. But yeah, in a perfect world, everybody would be executing everything seamlessly, right? And to your point, you mentioned, sometimes the smaller companies actually end up moving quicker on certain things. They're not encumbered by these big, expensive, heavy, like they've got big budgets, but you've also got big, expensive, heavy systems that are really hard to change and really hard to swap in and swap out. Or you've got layers and layers and layers of authority above you. You can't get anything done. And sometimes it's the smaller brands, smaller companies that can move quicker.
Yeah. And it's funny because we actually worked with a retailer that decided that they wanted to re-platform. And, like re-platforming is such a headache. So they basically were like a venture company, and they buy out like, e-commerce operations. So they previously had worked with like smaller companies. So re-platforming for them was like something like quick turnaround. But then they buy this site, this legacy, like, platform that they were on, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to turn it around in 2 months. Oh my God. Like, it's now been, I think, almost like, I would almost say 9 months, and they haven't been able to re-platform. It's just been a nightmare for them. Damn. And that's the thing. It's just like, well, re-platforming is, like you said, you do want to upgrade your technology. You do want to make sure that you're able to, like, change things quickly. Yeah. But at the same time, you have to understand what it takes, especially like the type of operation that you have going on, and the type of company that you have. There's so many details, sometimes that, you can't overlook anything, because ultimately it's going to break the experience, and it's going to be a worse, like in the end, re-platforming is going to probably drive down conversions significantly. So
yeah.
So yes, yes, technology, but what we had advised them was, listen, you're not going to re-platform right away. Do conversion rate optimization the best you can on your current like, legacy platform. And then once you, are able to have everything kind of in place, then you can kind of move forward to replatforming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I think there's kind of this trend towards even microservices now, right? Because then you can stay on your painful, platform that you've invested a ton of time and money, especially if you customize the heck out of. But then you can do that next little thing by, plugging in something else and then hooking it back into your system. Like there's a little bit more appetite for, kind of enhancing systems without doing that big rip and replace. But yeah, like the hardest replatformings are off of homegrown systems, right? If you start off small, you build everything to spec, you hired a team locally and stuff, and then you go out there into the market and nothing off the shelf has like that one little feature. Like maybe that's a stock notifier that was built in a very certain way because the way that you bring in stock is, smaller quantities and all that kind of stuff. You want to do a last in, first out. You built in all of this logic into your system, and then you go out there and you can't find that use case, in a SaaS platform, or got to build it again.
Yeah. No, it could be very nightmarish. And, a lot of times, I mean, even when it comes to conversion rate optimization, a lot of times we'll run into those snags with certain companies just because of some changes that we would, like we recommend based on our research, ultimately means that they have to do some changes in the back end, which is just a complete mess. You don't even want to touch it.
Yeah.
So that's it's a struggle of CRO in general. Just working with larger organizations. A lot of times they have these legacy websites, and you just have to kind of figure out ways to prototype a certain change that you want to make based on like the research that you've done, and show that it has some sort of like a significant uplift. And then based on that, then they'll go back and they'll do the back end change. They're not going to do the back end change if they haven't seen any type of initial kind of uplift based on what you're kind of recommending.
That's kind of a catch-22, hey? Because, if you have to prove out something that would require a change, but you're not going to change the back end until you can prove it out, then it comes kind of, do something skunk works in the middle. Maybe we can show that we can prove our hypothesis just through UI changes, and then is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Take some creativity.
I mean, and sometimes, like you said, sometimes it is impossible to be able to create some sort of like a prototype experience that would achieve what you're trying to display. But like I think been doing this for so long that we've figured out workarounds.
Yeah.
To still be able to show some sort of kind of when there is a change that we want to kind of display. But if it requires back end, a lot of times, like again, like it depends on the exact change that we're trying to make.
Mm-hmm. Now, you and your husband both wrote a book, which is, first of all, that is couples goals right there. Both of you writing an internet marketing book. It's amazing. And I know it's been a while. I think we first reviewed it on the Get Elastic blog back in 2010 when it published, and now it's been a full decade. Do you find that it's easier to implement some of your, with the back-end development and stuff in the last 10 years? Has it been easier to move quickly on conversion tests, with respect to like making tweaks on the back end, now that we have things like content management systems that business users can go in and maybe make a change? Or do you feel that it's just as IT and developer heavy as it was back then?
I mean, definitely things have changed dramatically in the past 10 years. When we wrote the book, things were not as advanced. They weren't as, mobile focused, for example. Just even the way that we implemented tests, the speed at which we implemented tests was very different. It was slower, not as quickly. Now it's like, we really try to amp up those tests as quickly as possible for clients, and just also finding those developers that can work with the technology and be able to implement the changes. So things have changed a lot, and I think when I look back at the book written in 2010, there's like the core areas, there's relevance, like in terms of like the conversion framework and whatnot. Those things have haven't changed. Yes, you still want to establish trust. Yes, consumers still have like those fears, uncertainties, and doubts. Yes, you want to make sure that keep them engaged, etc. So those things are still at the core of it, true. But there are certain things that have changed so much. Like, I remember back in 2010, sometimes we'd make simple tweaks to a site just because I think the web in general wasn't as advanced as it is now, that, it would have a significant uplift. Whereas now, template tweaking, I mean, there's just no way that you're going to see an uplift with customers. People still talk about changing a color or changing, like some image or whatnot, and
Make
it's just
the
like
logo bigger.
That doesn't
please.
work. Exactly. Consumers are so sophisticated, and they see the more sophisticated kind of websites and experiences. So it's not going to cut it for them to just change a color of this, call to action button. So whenever I go to some marketing conference and somebody's saying that, and they're like, we experienced 89% uplift, I'm like, okay, come on, there's something going on with your statistics there. I think the way that you're running the test is completely false positives all the way.
Flip a coin. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if there's sort of an effect, because over the last 10 years, we have had a whole new generation moving into that cohort of being like serious online consumers and all that kind of stuff, whether it's, whatever the call to action is. I'm not just talking about e-commerce, but, you remember the old landing pages, the sales pages that went like this long, the early 2000s and stuff like that. Sure, a red button, is aggressive and a green button is nice and friendly, and, don't use submit, use, this kind of copy. I mean, that's just common sense. But I feel like, the more comfortable we are in technology, right, a lot of people use their phones to shop now. It's like it was the year of the mobile from 2007 all the way up till now, right? Every year is the year of the mobile. But I feel like, we're just more comfortable, and we can figure out a web page a lot easier. We'll figure out, we'll scroll if we have to, and we'll find that button. And, I remember maybe, let's say like 4 years ago, one of my recommendations for mobile was, well, everybody had this recommendation, right? If you had the hamburger menu, that it would convert better if you also specified that it was a menu, or you would make it stand out and all this kind of stuff. But I feel like, now 5 years later, everybody knows that those little 3 bars are a menu. And maybe that's my assumption because I haven't been testing in the last few years. But do you find the same thing? Like, is there any value in like over optimizing mobile menus, or do you think people have kind of like caught on? They get it now?
No. I think people in general have caught on. And again, like, it's funny because like I look at my 14-year-old who now is like, what are they, like, Generation Z? What are they calling that? I don't even know. But like, the way that she shops and the way that she uses her mobile device, and she only uses her mobile device. Like, she knows that her laptop is used for school, so she doesn't ever shop on her laptop. She's always doing it on her mobile device, and she's like downloaded like every single app that you can imagine from like her favorite stores. So it's funny to see, like, well, wow, like, they're so different than when, obviously when we were growing up. And, also, even the way that I use my mobile device, I do shop using my mobile device, especially if I'm buying something from Amazon. It's just a lot more convenient and easier. But, I'll still use my desktop, especially when it's like clothing or something and I want to, like, closer, like, view, or I'm still thinking about it. So that move for, and the thing is that I saw with conversion rate optimization in general is that we, created these responsive sites on mobile devices. But the thing is that we never thought of like just mobile by itself. Like, if you look at like China and how well they do, for example, in just like Singles Day compared to like, Valentine's Day here. Well, I mean, they literally, like, the way that they design mobile is like, the experience is just for mobile. It's not taking like a desktop experience and converting it to mobile. So, and until now, you still feel that a lot of, retailers and companies are still struggling with that idea of making sure that everything has to be mobile first. And that's where the experience really is, because majority of traffic, I mean, every single one of our clients, majority of traffic is coming through mobile. Desktop is becoming like, for a lot of consumers, almost obsolete, and sometimes people don't even own desktop devices. So continuously building sites on desktop and forgetting the fact that, hey, but it's not, I just don't want to create a mobile site based on what desktop was. No, I need to create something specific and really think about that experience and how I'm going to make it better and more user friendly and, really attract and engage the visitor.
What happens when the mobile website is overkill? I mean, when we look at WeChat, have you heard of WeChat stores? Like, you don't even leave WeChat. There's within a text message, a piece of AI will go and scour all the inventory in the WeChat stores and can just pop up, here's your bottle of wine you were just talking about with your friend or something like that. Like, it's crazy because it's too much friction to jump out of your chat. Like if you and I were having a text banter rally going back and forth, like who wants to jump out of that and go like off to a webpage that's so 2018, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, I think like, still, when we look at like, for example, a country like China, I think they've been able to like, capitalize on it a lot more and on the consumer. But for me, I don't think I would be able to handle that experience. So it depends on the generation, but I know that my daughter is a very different generation than I am, and she's going to deal with this and, interact with like whatever these like social apps are, like, whether it's Instagram or what's this, I can't even think of the name anymore, like, and buy things like immediately, like that's how it's going to be, because that's the type of generation that you have to kind of design for. So I think, if retailers aren't thinking of how to use those platforms, they might be missing out on future generations as a result.
And what a bummer, because how do you A/B test that, right? How do you A/B test an in-app buying experience? Because they're only going to be shown one thing. If they're scrolling like this through a feed or through an ad, well, I guess you could A/B test the ads or that kind of stuff. But brave new world.
You're gonna have to get creative. I mean, like for at least like CROs, like we have to keep up with what the technology is and think about like okay, well, how do we test this experience to make sure that it's even better, or is it really providing the result that we're looking for? So yeah, I mean, I think like definitely I think about that a lot because I see that things are moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Or it could be that the platforms themselves take that over and say like, look, we're collecting data over everyone and we know what converts, we know how to push the right content to the right person at the right time. So just send us your data feed. I feel like that's kind of how like Instagram and Facebook already work, right? Like you can set up all your ads or your whatever, build your campaigns and stuff, but they're only going to show them to the people that they think are going to respond and whatever. And you kind of have to trust them that their math is right. Is the control.
It's tough with Facebook. It's tough with Facebook, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think like, retailers, companies, I mean, that's where a lot of people are. So you have to think about if you want to reach an audience and you're not able to reach them with like the web, if you're not able to reach them with the Google ads, which are even more expensive a lot of times, then Facebook might be like your best bet.
Well, you got to go where the eyeballs are, right? When you think about new customer acquisition and stuff, I've heard those stories too. Like I went to an e-commerce conference last year where it was, more smaller, scrappier brands up there speaking and stuff like that. And there was this one board game that they're doing, I don't know, 10 figures, or not 10 figures, but like 10 million plus, just through Facebook acquisition, right? They know the ads, and that's the thing. You just crank it up until until you start getting diminishing returns on the ROI, which for them seems to be like exponential. Plus there's kind of with this board game, it's called Hunt a Killer. So it's kind of like a true crime kind of thing. They're probably, no pun intended, but they're probably killing it right now when people are at home, because the whole thing about that game was, like couples would get it for their date nights in, right? Like, oh, let's play this. It's kind of like Clue, but with probably more nuance to it. So
Like,
yeah,
and you're the character as opposed to, for example, like like little like a board game essentially.
yeah. There's only so many times I can be Colonel Mustard before I stop taking myself seriously. So yeah, I don't know how that game works, but yeah, I'm sure that it's evolved a little bit back from the old school
From the
game.
regular cool.
Yeah, there's probably a social component to it, and maybe like a multiplayer, and definitely community around it, right? The word of mouth is huge for them, but the whole social aspect of it. You can run an ad that has a lot of comments on the ad, right? Like today, think about how would you market a board game. Well, if you're not part of Hasbro already, then first of all, good luck. Good luck selling it at the flea market down the street. But that goes back to what we were talking about the low barrier of entry, which is great because it means that people who are creative and maybe use a GoFundMe or have, a small amount of seed capital to get it going can then get really smart with, even before you produce the thing, run some Facebook ads and see if there's even demand for this thing, and then go get her done. But yeah, well, you're talking about, how the next generation or the children generation right now, they're so mobile first, mobile, all this kind of stuff. You and me still like to use our desktop. I will never, prefer a tiny screen over a larger screen, but hey, there's a lot of reasons why people prefer their mobile. And then who knows what form factors are coming next. But, we've for a long time been talking about, is AI going to have an impact on jobs, right? What jobs is automation or AI going to replace? Is it going to replace marketing jobs, copywriting? I mean, it's laughable, the ad copy that AI is writing right now, but we're still early on the cusp of an emerging technology. And I'm looking at things like even design, like graphic design and t-shirt design and stuff. There was a retailer out of India that let they trained their AI in two ways. They showed them patterns, and then they showed them colors or whatever. And the AI started designing shirts, and they threw them in with a regular mix, and the AI design shirts were outperforming the ones that humans did in terms of sales and popularity. So, even things like creative work, when you take a machine that can kind of do these optimizations, it can change. It can change a lot, right? So, I wonder if in the future, part of the education curriculum and everything will be like, just like technology was embedded when we were in school, we got to use computers and all that kind of stuff. And I always explain that to my mom when she feels bad that she struggles with the computer and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but, we grew up with this from very young, like back with the dot matrix printers, we just got in on that ground level. But yeah, I wonder if like AI will be just a natural part of the new curriculum going up, and people will be very comfortable learning how to administer these things, and will be just grow up thinking in a different way. So there won't be this massive drop off where AI comes, takes everybody's job, and then there's no human involvement anymore. Like there will always be human involvement in, if nothing else, validating that the AI is doing what it's supposed to do.
Exactly. You don't want to just keep things running and then hope that, they're going to stay like, the way that you want. But did you watch that movie Hidden Figures?
No.
So it's like basically, these like these mathematicians at NASA, and how, again, for NASA at the beginning, it was all human calculations that were calculating like, how the rocket was going to launch, and like what the shuttle was going to launch, and all of that, how it was going to land. It was all human calculation. And then they show you how they were able to bringing in like kind of like the computers, but literally like within that organization, a lot of them just adapted. And for example, well, they brought in the computers, so they needed a lot of the employees that they had to just adapt and learn, the language of the computer in order to like, be able to work with it and, develop things and whatnot. So I think that, just like you said, it could be like that natural progression where we'll just have to probably like up skills, change things a certain way in order to adapt to, kind of like the changes that are happening. But if you think about it in everything that we do all the time, I mean, even when it comes to conversion rate optimization, it's always changing and we're always adapting and we're always adding new things to our process. It can't stay stagnant with the way that technology is moving and the way that people are, also like just the consumer in general is becoming so much more sophisticated. Things again, like you just have to kind of constantly be adapting and learning. So that saying of always be learning, always be growing, right? If you're not, you're going to be left, of course, behind. So I think there is a place for you in the future if you're able to kind of make those adaptations. It's not always easy for companies to do that.
Yep. And right now, someone's got to go and blaze the trail, right? Like now we're kind of reaping the benefits that people have gone before us with figuring out this SEO thing and conversion rate optimization thing and, all this kind of stuff, right? And now, like, everybody's still kind of scratching their heads like, huh, what about the AI? And so now we've got a lot of vendors that are saying like, hey, our tool XYZ is AI, this and that, and it's a machine learning algorithm. It has some degree of personalization into it, but is it that what we also think of AI as being an actual artificial intelligence that can understand context, that can make decisions on its own in a human-like way, which I don't think we're close to yet. I think there's a lot of smart people working on it, but we're still not there.
Yeah, I don't think we're there either. I think there's still a ways to go, but sometimes you're surprised by the way that things also are pushed onto you. Who would have imagined our life without, for example, like just like even.
So another one of my little failed predictions where I saw like a big opportunity in the market, but nothing ever really happened with it was, how like conversion optimization became, there's the tools, but then there was an industry that was born around it, right? And I thought that search and merchandising optimization would be the next conversion rate optimization for e-commerce, because there's tools like Bloomreach, which will, they have a machine learning component to it, so it kind of self-optimizes based on click-through and trends and all that kind of stuff. And then there used to be one that I think it got acquired by a couple companies, it got acquired by a company. That was called Giraffe, and it was a little bit more of a manual process, but it was, all the data that you don't get out of your e-commerce platform or out of even Google Analytics. In the back end, you could go in and see like any category or any search results page or anything like that. You could go in and see the actual products there, see their click-through, see their sell-through, see their absolute number of visits, the increase and decrease, and slice and dice the date ranges and stuff, just to have an understanding of how merchandise is turning over, how it's performing on the site. Because otherwise, it's just your catalog's online and it's kind of a black box. And so one of Giraffe's big customers was actually Nasty Gal, rest in peace, Nasty Gal. But they were extremely successful. You've seen the Netflix Girl Boss movie or something like that about it. So it's sad that company didn't sustain, but they actually had, which I think is really smart, they had category merchandisers for individual departments. So like dresses had their own dedicated merchandiser, and rainbow sequin jumpsuits had their own, and down the line. So every day a category manager could go in and reorganize things, because for a couple things, right? You've got a seasonality element to fashion. You've also got, say you've got click-through that's high but sell-through is low. One of the symptoms of that might be, well, a couple things, right? You might be running low on sizes, and that's a problem there. So instead of having it remain in the top slot, because personalization algorithms tend to favor popularity, whatever that means, right? So you can move it down, bury it, reorganize things, maybe give things that were on page 2, like newer items, a little bit better of a shot, they're up and coming, or find if significant drop, maybe move it to clearance. But the problem with that is that that's very resource heavy. Like who has the bandwidth to hire a team of category and department managers. I know Walmart has them, and
Exactly.
like Staples has them, and whatever. There's department stores will have them, but it's kind of a luxury. But I just thought that there was so much value in that, and I thought that that would be something that retailers would really see as a new opportunity in conversion rate optimization. Because there's one thing to tweak and tune a page layout and a checkout, and there's only so much you can do there. But to actually optimize your assortment, like I used to work in a shoe store back in my high school days, and it was you would reorganize the store based on certain factors, like frequently move things to the front, change a display, move things up and down, group different things together, and it would have an impact on sales and the way people responded to stuff in the store. And I mean, online it's the same thing. So yeah, anyways, that's my big long rant. I thought that that was going to be a discipline that would flourish and maybe have, agencies built around it to actually help people do it.
Yeah, no, and I can see definitely, like, again, as somebody who does conversion rate optimization, I can see value, but I also think that a lot of companies run into like kind of like the analysis paralysis situation where there's just so much data and they don't know what to look at and what to do. I mean, even like data that they should know and they should have, they don't necessarily even access it enough. So I think that happens to a lot of companies when it comes to having to sit there and analyze and decide and determine. Again, like if you have that AI component where it's like kind of like updating automatically, then it makes it a little bit easier. But nonetheless, I mean, I think that that's probably why a lot of at least when you look at the technology that a lot of these e-commerce companies have, like sometimes you're shocked and surprised because you're like, how do they not have this already implemented? How do they not have more personalization? How do they not have but that's kind of still the reality of the landscape, which based at least on right now what's happening in the world, it might change very quickly. Like they have to be a lot more adapt a lot faster and kind of really like amp up their technologies in order to have the information that they need. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of organizations fall into that issue of too much too much
I was really surprised though with like when the lockdowns just first started, how Amazon was not prepared with its own merchandising algorithms, right? Because I was looking even just for how like grocery stuff, and it would just be pages and pages, like canned soup, right? Pages and pages of out of stock stuff. And they didn't bury that and surface up what was still available. And I was really surprised because I thought that they were working with the cream of the crop. Like Rich Relevance, I believe it was Rich Relevance, the personalization program was actually ex-Amazon people, because I think Amazon had the first merchandising algorithm ever, right? And then someone went off and productized it. But I was really surprised they weren't quick enough to respond to that. So yeah, it becomes a problem between, it's too overwhelming and no one wants to get caught up in manual work, right? Especially if you have a massive catalog or you're an everything store. So I think maybe somewhere in the middle is like, okay, here's our general global rules that we can apply. Like maybe we have to make a sacrifice and that we can't go in and have a dedicated category manager, but in general, can we apply a bury rule to stuff that falls under X number of sizes left in stock, or after X number of days, if you're in a seasonal business, that there's a soft or a hard bury rule. I think maybe that could be the next conversion optimization practice that people build around, like how to actually get the most out of your Ninja Cadillac personalization tools. Gartner made a big bold prediction. They were saying by 2025 that nobody's going to be using. I'm butchering what the stat was, but by 2025, most marketers are going to abandon personalization due to lack of ROI.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I don't know. That's what I
That's
love about
interesting.
Gartner, because they'll drop these big bombs, and it doesn't matter whether they pan out or not, right? They can make
Like
these
a
big
bomb.
hairy
You're like, oh, what?
they can make big hairy like clickbaity type predictions, and a lot of smart people, smarter people than me at Gartner, right? So they probably do have some good reasons to make these predictions. But I feel like it's interesting. I mean, if that's true, is that because the marketers just plugged it and let it play and didn't really think through about how to actually tune it, or how to make sure they had the right content assets to set up their personalization tool for success? Did they just expect to acquire a piece of technology and call it a day? And I would say the same thing for AI, right? If there's going to be a lot of new AI tools coming down the pipe, I mean, who do you really point the finger at if there's no ROI? Is it that we just don't understand how to implement the tools, or that the tools just aren't as sparkly as they were supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's always that assumption that you can just put the tool and let it just do its thing. Um, but and you and I know that that's not the case, and you have to always be fine tuning. You always have to be looking under the hood, making
Mm-hmm.
sure that things are working properly. Like, and I think like even when you were talking about Amazon and how they weren't able to respond. Well, based on your search queries before, they already see that you have a preference to certain, items. So they're showing you those items that aren't even necessarily even relevant to the situation at hand. So, again, I think like that's just because of these personalization tools, and they just have them running, right? And they're just, well, this is kind of like, what's available, but it's not anticipating everything else that's happening. And you always need kind of like, people to be overseeing these things. And I don't think technology ever got to that point, a lot of these personalization tools where, like it can just be, you could just like run it and it's going to figure things out. No, you always have to be kind of like looking and checking. But I mean, I don't know if I would agree though, that with this like assessment that in 2025 that a lot of companies or e-commerce retailers won't be using personalization. I find that difficult to kind of process. Like that's a huge like what's like they still rely on those quite a bit.
Can I still get "Hi Linda" up in the top right hand corner when I sign into my favorite e-store? Hi, Linda. It's personalization.
Exactly. You want to see?
I signed in. They know my name. Awesome. Wow. Well, it was great catching up with you in these crazy times, and to take a little walk down memory lane too on a number of things.
Yeah, definitely,
See if
definitely.
see if our
Yeah.
predictions pan out.
Thank you, Linda. This was like amazing. Just like talking about all these like very important topics and like hearing your perspective. It's always enlightening.
Likewise.